So current unemployment data from the ABS for February 2020. So as you can see, unemployment is sitting at 5.1% at the moment. So we need to hit 4.5 to reach the unofficial goal. So we could be considered not at full employment at the moment. So the participation rate remains steady at 66%. We'll look into details what the participation rate means shortly. So yeah, please read through this slide and get down all the details about, the breakdown of the employment levels, where people are employed full-time, how many people are employed part-time, all that sort of stuff. It'll be interesting to see what happens for the March information, or the March data, once we get that information in April about how COVID-19 has impacted our economy. So when do these figures get updated? So the March issue will be out in April 16th, so that's only a few days away from the day of recording. What day is it today? 13th. So in about 3 days' time, we'll see the information. The April edition will come out in May. The May edition will come out in June. So with the exception of structural unemployment, the government is restricted in its ability to reduce these types of unemployment. The main type of unemployment the government seeks to lower via policy instruments is cyclical unemployment. What we're saying about policy instruments, guys, is monetary and fiscal policy. So what can the government do in terms of its budget to reduce levels of cyclical unemployment? So this is stuff like the job seeker allowance that they're giving at the moment to reduce cyclical unemployment. So this occurs when the economy is not operating at its full capacity due to aggregate demand deficiencies, e.g. when the economy is experiencing an economic downturn, such as a recession or COVID-19 at the moment. The government seeks to reduce structural unemployment by instigating measures that improve the skills of those structurally unemployed. These measures might include expenditure on education, work for the dole schemes, and or subsidies to employ those who are long-term unemployed for more than a year. So the government tries their best to try and alleviate these situations to get people back into the workforce, essentially. So how does full employment improve material living standards? Well, employment creates income, which is then used to purchase products, which improves your living standards. Some income generated from employment can be saved and invested, or it can be saved for future consumption. Firms will have an incentive to hire more labor to maximize their profits also. So as you can see here, this person's pretty happy buying all their high-end products. So non-material living standards, how's that impacted? Well, satisfaction of being employed and not confronting the stigma that is associated with unemployment. A feeling that one is making a contribution to society. The reduced likelihood of individuals will resort to crime to improve their living standards, and the positive impacts this has on social cohesion. So yeah, non-material living standards can improve by the fact that you have a job. You might feel better about yourself. Society might be better as a result. So those are some examples for you. So how does full employment improve the government's position? Well, the positive impact employment has on the government's other goals, such as equity in the distribution of income, or lowering poverty, and sustainable rates of economic growth. The reduced strain on the federal budget. This will reduce the strain on the federal budget, so they have more money available to use in other things to improve the living standards of Australians, rather than giving people wage support. The reduction in waste of human resources that occurs when productive individuals are out of the work. So yeah, we could maximize our PPF curve. So what are some negative things about achieving full employment? Well, the achievement of full employment may create a situation where the PPF potential has been achieved. As a result, it may create a situation where there are too many people chasing too few goods. This situation is known as demand pull inflation. The inflationary pressures are likely to cause the household sector to demand more wages for their jobs, and may add further to the inflationary pressure. As a result, firms will be more inclined to raise prices to ensure they still receive their profit margins. This situation is known as cost push inflation. So we'll look into this when we cover inflation in a little more detail. So the labor force. Alright, so all those over the age of 15 who are willing to able to work, they're called the labor force. This consists of people who are employed and unemployed. Alright, so that's the labor force. Anyone over 15 and who are willing and able to work, employed or unemployed. So the participation rate is defined as the percentage of the total working age population over 15 that are members of the labor force. Essentially, it is every single individual in the country over the age of 15. It doesn't discriminate through employment or unemployment, etc. It represents Australia's potential labour force. So the participation rate, the equation is labour force divided by the working age population, times it by 100. So in Australia, I think our participation rate is hovering somewhere around 66%. That means that out of all people aged 15 years and over, 66% are looking or have a job. So that's the participation rate. So unemployment rate is the amount of people in the labour force that are not employed. So it's the equation is unemployment rate equals unemployed divided by employed and unemployed people, or the labour force. So facts about hidden unemployment. The unemployment statistics do not reveal the extent of hidden unemployment. This occurs when people are not members of the labour force, would actually prefer to be working, but are not actively seeking employment because they are discouraged about their employment prospects. So hidden unemployment tends to increase during economic downturns, as repeated rejections cause job seekers to exit the labour force, which results in downward pressure on both the participation rate and the actual unemployment rate. In contrast, when the economy enters the recovery phase, job prospects improve, and some in the pool of hidden unemployment recommence their search for a job, replacing hidden unemployment with actual unemployment. Okay, going back to that statement about hidden unemployment, how does it result in downward pressure on both the participation rate and the actual unemployment rate? Well, the participation rate will get smaller as a result of people leaving the workforce, and the unemployment rate will get smaller. Why? Because the denominator number will be a smaller number, and if this is a smaller number, it'll make the unemployment rate level a lot smaller. Underemployment can be referred to as disguised unemployment. These people usually are working on a part-time or casual basis when they would prefer to work full-time. Alright, so we've already gone over this. Alternatively, they may be underemployed because their employer is operating below full capacity, e.g. full-time workers employed at reduced hours, like a lot of people right now with during this COVID-19 crisis. Many people underemployed experience similar problems to those unemployed: reduced incomes, greater stress, and a reduction in their living standards. So during an economic downturn, underemployment will tend to rise a greater extent than unemployment, as businesses decide to reduce the working hours of employees rather than making them redundant. This results in underutilization rate rising by a greater percentage than the unemployment rate. However, this is likely to be reversed during an economic recovery, as businesses will first offer existing workers more hours rather than take on additional workers. So the underutilization rate is, well, it shows you how inefficient we're using our labor resources. So generally they'll increase when there's poor economic conditions. So I go into detail about it. So in Australia, the labour force underutilisation rate is defined as the sum of the number of people unemployed and the number of people underemployed, expressed as a proportion of the labour force. It can also be viewed as the sum of unemployment rate and the underemployment rate. So this is the formula here. So the unemployed plus the underemployed divided by the labour force, times it by 100. In recognition of the shortcomings of unemployment statistics as a measure of both the spare capacity and the losses associated with little or no work, there is increasingly more emphasis given to the underemployment and underutilization rates. So what they're saying here, guys, if they realize the shortfalls or the weaknesses to unemployment rates, so they take the consideration of other factors, other stats such as underemployment and underutilization rates when determining economic conditions or health. Unemployment and the participation rate links. So when examining the relationship between the participation rate and the unemployment rate, it is necessary to focus on how a change in the participation rate can impact the unemployment rate and how a change in the unemployment rate can impact on the participation rate. So we have to look at the relationship both ways. On one hand, an increase in the participation rate is likely to cause a short-term increase in unemployment, as new job seekers are immediately classified as unemployed until they find work. So what happens is, guys, if the participation rate increases, that means there's more people available in the labour force. If there's more people available in the labour force, our denominator increases, making our unemployment levels look a lot worse than they should be. Alright, moving on. So over the long term, however, a higher participation rate can lead to a reduction in the unemployment rate. This is because any increase in the labour supply tends to exert downward pressure on wages, as there's greater competition for jobs and or an increase in labour productivity, as a larger supply of labour can force workers to increase their efforts. As a result, these factors can lead to the demand for labour, creating additional employment and lowering the unemployment rate. It's pretty self-explanatory. So when there's more workers available to do jobs, people can charge a lower rate in order to employ someone because they're all desperate for work. At the same time, those people who are currently employed will have to work harder to ensure they still have their job, because businesses can always just kick them out and replace them with someone who's willing to do the job a lot better for the same pay. So lastly, on the other hand, a decrease in the unemployment rate is likely to increase the participation rate. So a decrease in the unemployment rate is likely to increase the participation rate. Correct. This is because some job seekers become encouraged about the prospects of finding work and enter the labour force. In other words, workers who were previously classified as discouraged job seekers are now more likely to seek employment, as the likelihood of success is greater. So those people who had given up hope see that other people are getting a job at the moment. They're just going, hey, why not? Let me try looking for work again. I might have a better chance this time of getting a job. And that's everything you need to know about the goal of full employment. If you have any questions, give me a buzz.